Let me read to you a passage from the 19th chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel, verses 3 to 12. It's the Gospel for Friday of the 19th week of Ordinary Time. St. Matthew writes, "Some Pharisees approached Jesus and tested him, saying, 'Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any cause whatever?' He said in reply, 'Have you not read that from the beginning the Creator made them male and female, and said, For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother, and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh? So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, no human being must separate.' They said to him, 'Then why did Moses command that the man give the woman a bill of divorce and dismiss her?' He said to them, 'Because of the hardness of your hearts, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, unless the marriage is unlawful, and marries another, commits adultery.'" That's from Matthew chapter 19, verses 3 to 12, speaking to us about marriage. You know, it is natural for the human being to take pride in what he does, in his work. A man may build his own house, or create and develop his own garden, or build up his professional work, raise his family, or do some other work in life that gives him a certain pride and joy. What he does and the work he develops is an important expression of himself. We must understand this broadly, of course, for a sick and bedridden person can have a work to do in life, and it might be to suffer well. St. Bernadette Soubirous said as she began her last illness that it was her last job. One might say that a person's work, what he actually does, expresses and conveys his most important thoughts and values. It is his word to the world. Pope John Paul II entitled his most important philosophical book, The Acting Person, placing emphasis on a person's action rather than simply on his thought. As a man has his work, so God works. The work of God that is most immediately evident to us is creation. We see this work all around us. And the book of Genesis opens with God doing this very work, the work of creating the world. As something he does, creation is something he says. Created nature, the world that is before us, is the word of the Creator to those who can hear or read it. There is a strong line of thought in English theism and apologetics that begins with the dictum that nature is the voice of God. The nature or the created world into which we are born and of which we are part, and which continually surrounds us, speaks of its author who has expressed himself in it. It is his word, his voice, his created statement. Cardinal Newman famously took the point a step further and pointed to the natural conscience as the voice of its divine author, revealing not only his will but something of his nature. But now, there are other things in the world which in the divine plan are especially the work of God, and therefore are his voice, his word. They express his own divine nature to a point, and therefore his will. Our gospel passage today points to one great thing in the world which has come from the hand of God: marriage. Marriage between man and woman. Marriage is God's creation. I'm not sure that man would be able to see with his own unaided reason that a true marriage is indissoluble and monogamous. The voice of mankind on the point is so mixed and confused. Fallen human nature seems, on the face of it, to have failed to attain clarity on this point. But such is the case in many other matters too, such as the primary truth of one infinite God. Though human reason is capable of attaining this truth, the fact is that the testimony of mankind is profoundly discordant in the matter of the deity. So it is in the question of marriage. But we have the immense benefit of a divine revelation, not only in respect to the nature of the deity itself, but in respect to many other matters, marriage included. At the outset of the inspired scriptures, which is to say, in the first 2 chapters of the first book of the Bible, man is taught that there is but one Almighty God who is the creator of all, and that he created marriage too. Further, we have the inestimable benefit of the teaching of Jesus Christ on this matter of the teaching of the first 2 chapters of Genesis on marriage. Christ has authoritatively interpreted the meaning of Genesis 1 and 2 on marriage. As we heard, have you not read that from the beginning the Creator made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother, and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh? So they are no longer two but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, no human being must separate. Matthew chapter 19 verse 3 to 12. If the world and nature, being the work of God's hands, constitute his word and express something of his nature, this is so for marriage too. Genesis states that the image of God is given in the complementarity of man and woman. In the divine image he created him. Male and female he created them. Genesis chapter 1 verse 27. Marriage, which is the work of God, reflects the life of God. It reveals both his love for man, who is the work of his hands, and it reveals the communion within himself, that is his own life. The communion of love between the divine persons of the Godhead is eternally indissoluble, and he joins man and wife in marriage to reflect this. Thus is the bond of marriage by nature indissoluble. What God has joined, man must not divide. Much light on the meaning of things comes from reason, but our best light comes from a divine revelation. That revelation is present in its fullness in the person and word of Jesus Christ. He has thrown light on the work of God, that is marriage. Marriage is God's creation. He himself joins husband and wife in marriage, and being his work, their marriage is his word. It reflects not only his will for them, but something of himself and his own nature. Marriage is a natural revelation, and it reveals both the love of God for man and the loving communion that constitutes his own life. Let every married couple then make it their mission in life to live as a reflection of the divine.